These sponsors are very important to what we're doing here today, so be appreciative of them. All right, we're going to bring Carl Crozier up. David Hardy will be up behind him. They had some tests out in the field looking at potassium and starter fertilizer. Carl Crozier.
All right, good morning. I think you set me up here first because I'm supposed to be smart at computer and know how to work the clickers and all that, but we'll see if that works out. It is good to have you at the Blacklands. We're not getting in the field, but if there's things you want to see, we'll talk to you about it, and you will definitely be seeing this information later. I do have a little bit of a Blackland soil profile laid out on the tailgate of my pickup out there. I'll be happy to talk to you about it. Look around this area, and you've got a nice dark soil surface, and it's highly productive. Now, the other thing to remember is you dig down and you realize there's a very thin topsoil layer that takes very careful management, and that's key to success in this area. I'm going to talk about a starter fertilizer test. We do appreciate the support we've got from the corn growers. Collaborators, I've got several from our department, Dr. Deanna Osman, Scott Tilley's here, a regional agent. And then we've also got a collaborator at Clemson University, Dr. Formaja. Let's see. So, first step. Could y'all change the slide for me? I'm not getting this clicker. Okay, there we go. The reason I got interested in this, thinking about the ag economy here, for corn production, this is what the latest information on NC State's Ag Economics website says. Fertilizer and lime are about 30% of the total variable cost for corn crop, and a little over 22% for soybean. So these are very important management decisions working towards successful farming. All right. The rationale for the starter study is that we haven't always gotten consistent results in the past. People have been looking at starter fertilizer for a lot of years. There's been a lot of changes, plant populations and the equipment, the number of products out there. Some of the experiments in the past, if we go to a site that's got high soil test phosphorus, and we look at starter fertilizer, whether we add nitrogen or nitrogen plus phosphorus, we usually got the same yield, which looked like we could leave out the phosphorus ingredient. And as I mentioned, all these sites had soil test index over 100. Let's see. Okay, there we go. We've done some more recent tests, and many of these had lower soil test indexes, some of them in the 30s and 60s. And we do occasionally get responses to the starter fertilizer, but we have what we call confounding effects because we don't always have all the fertilizers put out with the planter. It takes a lot of time to switch the material in the tank on the planter. So we can have a setup where we could either we could put out a banded fertilizer with the planter, but we might not be able to switch the tank. We do have one cooperator in this area where we've been able to both switch to either an injector knife or a dribble and using a small side tank, switch materials. So let's see. Okay. Most of the tests are done with a small research planter. We use 2 rows. And we will use a little rack. We'll just put canisters of fertilizer that we can switch very rapidly. And then we can also, our plumbing, we can switch from putting out an injected 2x2 band to dribbling on the surface. Okay, so the objectives really on this test were to determine if the nitrogen alone or the nitrogen plus phosphorus ingredient was an advantage. And we also have a control. And then also to determine if the placement of the starter fertilizer affected the efficacy of the use. And then again, there's lots more options than this. Like I said, our collaborator at Clemson has put some additional treatments out in a larger experiment. All right, and we think about it, our treatments go back to either the material, the starter of the material, and this is a cost that you would incur every acre every year. And then they deal with equipment, which would be a setup cost, but you would average that cost over number of acres and numbers of years. we got standard approach. We're doing, let's see, multiple locations. I was trying to go back one. Oops. Trying to go back one. Okay. We did multiple locations each year, Pioneer 1197, YHR. We're targeting what we consider relatively high populations. For this part of the state, close to 40,000. For the Piedmont, about 30,000. And then we're going to look at grain yield, but we're also going to look at some early season growth indicators. Let's see. Oops. Okay, and then this thing is, okay. Frequently we see a visual response. In this case, we've got greener plants there on the left where we had starter than we do on the right where there's no starter. Oops. Okay, this is what we had this year, Beaufort County. Fairly uniform stand. We planted April 19th. It was a little cool. We didn't get any emergence till the 29th. And our basic nitrogen program would be 30 pounds if it got the starter, 60 pounds uniform at planting, and 100 pounds side dress. We had 91% of the plants emerge that first day. And then in 2 additional days, we had a few more plants come up. So I'm trying to get to go forward one. I hadn't quite got the slide advanced. Let's see. Okay. And what we found last year, looking at these, this is a plant that came up the second day. We mark them with golf tees, so later in the season we can go back. And we normally find, last year we don't have a lot of them, just a few percent, but those stalks look pretty good. This is one, whoops. Okay. Where we got a green tea, that's one that came up 2 days later. In this case, we got a pretty skinny stalk. So we are working in a scenario, we need to have pretty good planter operation and placement, so we're trying to get that simultaneous emergence. Okay. All right. This is Pamlico County. It was planted earlier, April 6th. It got very cold after that. We didn't have anything emerge for 12 days. Okay. When we did look at emergence, it was much more spread out over time. 23% that first day, 38% the second day, and another 20% the third day, and that's still, we got 19 more percent. It was over a 5-day period we had emergence. All right, Washington County planted May 1st. Warmer, everything came up faster. We had 98% come up the first day. So we are tracking the emergence on those. And then depending on how many we get, we can work with that statistically. Let's see. Okay. This is just a small sample of the ears that came out of the plot here, Beaufort County. And again, we've got the 2 on the left, didn't get any starter fertilizer, and then we've got 2 treatments that get nitrogen, 2 that get nitrogen phosphorus. We find a lot of overlap. We get some good ears and some poor ears in each treatment, but what we're looking at is converting that to yield later, and we are tracking some of the ear yield components, number of rows. In this case, just a small sample. Mostly we got 14-row ears. The only one I found with 12 rows was in a no starter. The only one I found with 20 rows was in that 2x2 band nitrogen phosphorus. Okay. Again, a subsample of ears from a Washington County site. No starter on the left, starter on the right. Again, we get good ears in all of them, but it looks like we got a higher percentage that are a little bit wider and maybe an extra 2 rows where we have that starter fertilizer. Okay. This is the second year on that test. Last year's data, we had yields ranging from 121 to 250 bushels an acre. The one that's in the red there, the Terrell County site, that was the one out of these 5 sites where we had statistically a significant response to our starter treatment. It's not the highest or the lowest yielding. What does separate it out a little bit, it's the one that had the lowest soil test phosphorus index to start with. We did apply broadcast fertilizer, but with the starter fertilizer placement, you can get quicker availability of that. Okay, if we look at that site and the treatments, again, we've got a control and we've got different starters. The one that's in red there, nitrogen plus phosphorus in the 2x2 band, that's the only one that in a statistical category had a significantly higher yield than that control. And since we've got the treatments arranged in the structure, we can break them down. If I look at the 2 sources of nitrogen, or 2 sources of starter, having the extra phosphorus ingredient gave me an extra 17 bushels there, and having the 2x2 placement gave me an extra 11 bushels over surface placement. Yeah, and that was for the one site there. We did look at early growth. We looked at height, population, and emergence days. In none of these cases did we find the starter affected mortality. So we basically had the same population. Also, the starter we didn't pick up anything on emergence day, but sometimes statistically, we got a lot of variability, so we're not doing anything there. We did find taller plants frequently where we had starter. And again, at this site for Crimmins County, the 2 that were higher than control were the 2 that had the nitrogen plus phosphorus. Okay, Terrell County, we didn't find any difference in height, although we did get the difference in yield. And let's see, one more. Okay, Washington County, again, the one that was taller than the control was nitrogen phosphorus in the 2x2 band. Next slide, okay. Summary for that, we did get some responses to starter, but not all the time. It was limited. We found it more often with early growth, about half the time, and we just got the yield response 1 out of those 5 tests. When we did get the response, it was pretty big and likely to be profitable, 18 bushels an acre. That was the site where we had the lowest initial soil test P. Both the ingredients, the nitrogen and phosphorus, led to higher yields, and the 2x2 injected band led to higher yields. So this is the second year of that. We realized there's a lot more different combinations of materials and hardware that we could use, and we'll probably be sitting down and planning on that next. So I'll be here all morning, be happy to answer any questions, and other than that, I'll turn it over.